AITA for refusing a $47,600 rehab contract that was signed for my brother without my consent? I'm Rachel, 35, and my family still tells people I abandoned my brother when he was finally trying to get help. What they leave out is that I woke up from anesthesia to my mother holding a clipboard, telling me the paper was just something I needed to sign so she could drive me home. For most of my life, I was the easy child. Not the favorite child, the easy one. My older brother, Owen, is 39. He was always the one everybody worried about. He was charming when things were going well and impossible when they were not. There was always some crisis around him. A late payment, a wrecked car, a lease he couldn't cover, a job he had walked away from on principle, a loan that was supposedly temporary, or a fight with somebody who had pushed him too far. My mother, Linda, had one explanation for all of it. He needs support, not judgment. My father, Frank, preferred practical language. What's done is done. Let's solve the problem first. No point in making it worse. Owen was never described as irresponsible. He was struggling. He never lied. He was ashamed. He never got bailed out. My parents were helping him get back on his feet. And me? I was stable. That word followed me around like a job title I never applied for. Rachel is stable. Rachel can handle it. Rachel understands. Rachel doesn't need as much help. Rachel can wait. Rachel can cover dinner this time. Rachel can lend him the deposit. Rachel can keep this between us because Owen is embarrassed. For years, I told myself that was what families did. Not all the time, obviously, but when somebody was in trouble. The problem was that Owen was almost always in trouble. I had gotten better about saying no by the time I married Joel. He is 37, patient but not passive, and he noticed the family dynamic long before I admitted there was one. A few years ago, Owen called me because the power at his apartment was about to be shut off. He didn't ask me for money at first. He asked whether I could put the account in my name for a month or two, because there was some issue with his credit. I actually considered it. Joel was sitting across from me at the kitchen table when I repeated the request. He stared at me for a second and said, "Helping is one thing. Becoming the paperwork is another." I laughed because it sounded dramatic at the time. I did not put the utility account in my name. My mother called me the next day and said Owen had been humiliated enough already. That became the pattern. Owen asked. I said no. Mom called. Dad sent a calm text. Eventually the crisis moved on. I thought that meant I had boundaries. I was wrong. About 3 weeks before the procedure, Owen stopped showing up on family calls. That wasn't completely unusual, but it was noticeable. My parents suddenly became vague whenever I asked about him. He's dealing with some things, Mom said. What things? He just needs space. A week later, my cousin Beth texted me. Your mom said Owen finally agreed to get help. That is huge. I called Mom almost immediately. Help for what? There was a pause. He's somewhere safe. Is he in the hospital? No. Then where is he? Rachel, please don't interrogate me. He is trying to do something good. I remember looking at Joel after I hung up. Apparently, Owen is getting help. For what? Nobody will tell me. Joel frowned, but neither of us pushed it. We had learned that my family often turned basic questions into accusations of disloyalty. Around the same time, I had an outpatient medical procedure scheduled. Nothing dramatic, but I was going to be sedated and needed an adult to drive me home and stay nearby afterward. Joel had already arranged to take me. Then Mom became weirdly insistent that she wanted to do it. I never get to take care of you, she said. You don't need to take care of me. I'm going to be asleep for half the day. Exactly. Let me be your mother for once. I told her Joel had already planned his schedule around it. She sounded hurt. You always let him do everything now. That comment irritated me because it wasn't true, but I also didn't want to fight over something this small. Joel said he could switch his schedule back if I wanted. You sure? I asked. He shrugged. If she really wants to sit in a waiting room for 3 hours, let her. The morning of the procedure, Mom picked me up early. Before we even pulled away from the curb, she asked, You have your wallet, right? Yes. And your ID? It's in my wallet. Okay, just in case. I remember that because she asked again when we got to the building. Do you have your ID with you? I held up my purse and said, Mom, I'm 35. I know how appointments work. She gave me this tight little smile. Just making sure. My dad texted while I was checking in. Your mother is nervous today. Just make things easy for her. I almost sent back, I'm the one getting sedated, but I didn't. That text ended up matching later. The procedure itself was routine. The last clear thing I remember was a nurse telling me they were giving me medication through the 4. Then there are fragments. A blood pressure cuff tightening around my arm. A nurse asking if I was nauseous. My mother's voice saying my name. A cup of water with a straw. A clipboard. The blue pen. I remember Mom leaning over me and saying, I just need you to sign here so I can take you home. I remember trying to focus on the page. There were papers clipped together. I could see blocks of text, but they swam when I looked at them. I thought they were discharge forms. That made sense. Everything around me was discharge paperwork. A nurse had already gone over medication instructions and told Mom what symptoms would mean I needed to call the office. Here? I asked. Right there. She tapped a line. I signed. I have a vague memory of saying, Why do you have this? Mom said, It's just discharge stuff. I signed one place. Maybe 2. I honestly couldn't tell you now whether I signed twice or whether my memory repeated the same moment. I do remember the pen. Cheap blue plastic, the kind offices buy in boxes of 50. Mom put the clipboard against her chest almost immediately afterward. Then she helped me stand up. At home I slept. By evening, Joel was there with soup and a list of the nurse's instructions that Mom had left on the counter. How was your mother? He asked. Anxious. About you. I thought about it. Not exactly. Then I laughed and let it go. For the next few days I was tired but fine. The first sign that something was wrong looked so boring that I ignored it. There was a small charge on one of my accounts from a facility I didn't recognize. It was under $200. The name didn't match the place where I had my procedure, but billing names are strange sometimes, and I assumed it was a lab or an outside service. I made a mental note to check it later. A few days after that, I got a notice in the mail. At first, I thought it was medical billing related to my procedure. Then I saw Owen's name. I read the first page twice. It was from a private residential treatment facility. The total financial responsibility listed was $47,600. There was language about program costs, deposits, non-covered services, collection rights, and guarantor obligations. Under financially responsible party was my name, my address, my phone number, and a scanned signature that looked enough like mine to make my stomach drop. I called Mom before I called the facility. She answered on the 3rd ring. Why is my name on Owen's treatment contract? Silence. Not confusion. Silence. Then she said, What did you receive? You know what I received. It's probably just administrative. Mom, it says I'm financially responsible for $47,600. Rachel, lower your voice. I was not yelling. Did you give them my information? Owen needed to get into the program quickly. That wasn't an answer. Did you give them my information? She exhaled. You signed paperwork. My hand went cold around the phone. What paperwork? The paperwork at the hospital. You told me that was so you could drive me home. It included authorization. For what? Rachel, please. He is sick. I stood there in my kitchen staring at the page. Joel came in from the other room, saw my face, and stopped. I said, Did you use the paperwork I signed after sedation for Owen's rehab? Mom started crying. Not hard. Not yet. Just enough for her voice to break. I was trying to save your brother. I hung up. My father called less than 5 minutes later. I let it ring. He called again. Then a text came through. Don't make this uglier than it is. Paperwork can be corrected later. I showed Joel. He read it once, then again. Call the facility. I need to think. No, you need information. Thinking comes after you know what they did. I called the number on the notice. The first person I spoke with told me the account showed me as the guarantor, and that there was a signed financial responsibility agreement on file. I told her I had never agreed to guarantee my brother's treatment. She transferred me to billing. Billing transferred me to someone in compliance. That woman asked me to confirm my identity, then said she was going to make a note that I disputed the agreement. I asked for a complete copy of everything with my name on it. She said she could send it through a secure portal and asked whether I wanted an itemized bill too. Yes. There was a pause while she typed. Then she said, I also want to make sure I understand what you're alleging. Are you saying the signature is not yours? I looked at the scan in front of me. The signature was shaky and compressed. Meyer had the wrong angle. The end of my last name dragged down instead of up. But I could not truthfully say it was not mine. I think I physically signed it, I said. I did not know what I was signing. She asked me to explain. So I did. I told her I had been sedated for an outpatient procedure. I told her my mother had presented papers to me after I woke up and said they were connected to my discharge and her driving me home. I told her I had never spoken with the rehab facility before that week. I had never discussed price, program length, insurance, payment, or agreeing to be a guarantor. The woman got much more careful after that. She didn't say, "You're right." She didn't say, "This is fraud." She said, "I am escalating this for review." The next day, a billing investigator called me. He sounded neutral in the way people do when they have learned not to react while collecting facts. He asked when my procedure had occurred. He asked what medication I had received if I knew. He asked when I remembered signing. Then he asked, before signing, had anyone from this facility explained the financial responsibility agreement to you? No. Had you discussed becoming guarantor for Owen? No. Did you know whose treatment your signature guaranteed? I closed my eyes. By then I knew. My brother's. Did you understand that at the time you signed? No. That was the moment it stopped feeling like a family argument about money. It became something else. The investigator told me the account would be marked as disputed while they reviewed the circumstances. He could not promise an outcome. He said I might be asked to complete an identity dispute or fraud affidavit, depending on what their compliance department found. Then he said something that stuck with me. Please preserve any messages about how the document was presented to you. I had messages. A lot of them. Not one perfect confession. My family was not that careless. But enough pieces to make a picture. I started with the procedure. I called the clinic where I had been sedated and requested my discharge record, medication record, and any nursing notes showing when I was awake, when instructions were reviewed, and when I left. The nurse I spoke with asked why I needed such a detailed timeline. I signed something unrelated to my care while I was recovering. She went quiet. Then she said, "I'll put in the records request." I also asked whether the clinic had any financial paperwork for me signed after the procedure. They did not. That mattered because Mom had claimed what I signed was discharge stuff. The actual discharge acknowledgement in my medical file had been handled separately, and it did not resemble the page on the rehab contract. When the rehab facility sent the full contract, I sat at the dining room table with Joel and went through every page. The agreement was 13 pages. The signature page was near the back. My signature sat under a paragraph stating that the signer accepted financial responsibility for amounts not covered by insurance or otherwise paid. My name had been filled in electronically on earlier pages. My address had been typed. My phone number had been typed. Someone had already completed most of it before the day of my procedure. The signature itself was handwritten. My signature. That was when I remembered Mom asking twice whether I had my ID. She needed your information before that, Joel said. They already had my address. Your mother knows your address. I know. She knows your birthday. I know. She knows your phone number. I looked at him. I know. He didn't say anything for a minute. Then he asked, "What do you want to happen?" I hated that question. I wanted the contract gone. I wanted Owen to stay in treatment. I wanted my mother to admit exactly what she had done. I wanted my father to stop pretending this was a typo. I wanted to go back to the recovery room and take the pen out of my own hand. Instead I said, I don't know. Joel leaned back. You know one thing. What? You did not agree to this. I felt defensive even though he was not attacking me. If I dispute it and they kick Owen out, I have to live with that. Yes. His answer made me angry. That easy? No, not easy. Just true. I got up and started collecting the papers. He said, Rachel. What? You can love him and still refuse to be used. I snapped, I know that. But I did not know it. Not fully. That night I barely slept. The next morning Beth called. She is my older cousin, 42, and until then she had stayed out of most of our family drama. Hey, she said carefully. I wanted to check on you. Why? Your mom called. Of course she did. What did she say? Beth hesitated. That Owen is in treatment and you're trying to cancel the financial arrangement. I laughed once. The financial arrangement. Rachel, I don't know the details. Did she tell you I agreed to pay for it? She said you signed. Did she tell you when? Another pause. No. Did she tell you what she told me I was signing? No. Beth sighed. Look, I know your relationship with Owen is complicated, but if he's finally getting help, maybe this is not the moment to pull the floor out from under him. There it was. The family version of me had already been built. Not Rachel discovered a contract she never knowingly agreed to. Rachel was pulling the floor out from under Owen. I said, I had been under anesthesia. What? I signed the page after my procedure while I was still groggy because my mother told me it was paperwork so she could take me home. Beth did not answer immediately. Finally she said, she did not tell me that. I assumed. Are you sure that's what happened? That question hurt more than I expected. I am sure enough that the clinic is sending me my recovery timeline. Beth softened a little. Okay, I didn't know. Most people don't, because she called you before I did. After we hung up, I texted Mom. Do not discuss my finances or this contract with relatives again. She replied almost immediately. This is not about your finances. This is about your brother's life. I saved the message. Then Dad texted me. Let it stand for now. Once he is stable, we'll figure out the money. I read that sentence several times. Let it stand. Not there is a mistake. Not we'll remove you. Not your mother panicked. Let it stand. I called him. He answered like he had been expecting me. What did you know? Rachel, I am not doing an interrogation. What did you know about Mom getting my signature? He sighed. Your mother was trying to get Owen into a bed while he was willing to go. That is not what I asked. The facility needed a responsible party. Why weren't you the responsible party? Silence. Why wasn't Mom? He said. We've had some financial issues. I almost laughed. You mean because you've already borrowed money for Owen? That is not the point. It is exactly the point. He lowered his voice. Your mother thought you would help once you understood the situation. So why not ask me before? Because there was no time for one of your debates. That sentence changed something in me. One of your debates. That was how he described my consent. An inconvenience. I said. Did you know she was going to have me sign after my procedure? I knew she had paperwork. Did you know she was going to tell me it was discharge paperwork? Don't put words in my mouth. Did you know I had not agreed to pay? He paused. Then he said, I knew you had not agreed yet. Yet. I actually wrote that word down after we hung up. A few hours later, another piece landed. I called Owen. He had ignored 2 texts from me since the bill arrived, but this time he picked up. His voice sounded tired. What? Why are you in rehab? You know why. No, I don't. Mom told me there was a medical emergency. He did not answer. Owen. I had a bad night. What does that mean? Rachel, I am in treatment. Isn't that what everybody wanted? What happened? He started getting angry. Why do you need every ugly detail? Because my name is on a $47,000 contract. He breathed into the phone for a few seconds. Then he said, there was an accident. What kind of accident? A car accident. My stomach tightened. Had you been drinking? Silence. Owen. Yes. Was anyone hurt? Not badly. That phrase sounded exactly like my father. Not badly. I said, what happened? He told me in pieces. He had been drinking. He drove. He hit another vehicle. The other driver went to the hospital and was released. The legal and insurance fallout was still developing. My parents had pushed him into treatment almost immediately. Then Owen said, Mom's lawyer friend said it would matter that I got help right away. There it was. Treatment was not fake. Owen really did need help. But the urgency was not only about his health. My parents wanted him inside a private program fast, because they thought it might help show he was taking responsibility after the crash. The program was expensive. They needed a guarantor. They could not qualify the way they wanted. So they used me. Did you know they were putting me down as guarantor? I asked. Owen did not answer. Did you know? I knew Mom said you would help. That is not what I asked. He snapped. I was trying not to go to jail, Rachel. I was trying to get sober. I wasn't sitting there reading contracts. You knew my name was being used. I knew Mom was handling the money. With my name. I don't know. His voice cracked a little on the last word. For the first time, he sounded less angry than scared. I almost backed off. That was my old reflex. Find the part of Owen that was hurting and stop asking questions. Instead, I said, if you remember, tell me the truth. He whispered, I heard them talking about you. Who? Mom and Dad. What did they say? I don't remember exactly. Owen. I don't. I waited. Then he said, Dad said you would calm down once I was already inside. I closed my eyes. That was enough. Not legally, maybe. Not by itself. But personally, it was enough. This was not Mom grabbing the wrong page in a panic. It was a plan. Maybe a desperate plan. Maybe a plan made by terrified parents trying to keep their son alive and out of deeper trouble. Still a plan. I spent the next 2 days gathering records. The clinic sent my discharge notes. They showed the time the sedative had been administered, when I entered recovery, when I was documented as drowsy but responsive, and when I met discharge criteria. The timestamp on the rehab signature page fell inside that recovery window. The rehab facility sent an itemized statement and the contract packet. The records showed that most of my guarantor information had been entered before my procedure date. The only thing added that day was the handwritten signature. The investigator asked me to submit a written statement. I wrote it 3 times before sending it. The first version was angry. The second version sounded like I was apologizing. The third was factual. I stated that I had not been told I was signing a financial responsibility agreement. I had not consented to guarantee my brother's treatment. I had been recovering from sedation when the signature was obtained. The person who presented the document to me told me it was related to my discharge and ride home. I requested that collection activity against me stop while the dispute was investigated. Then came the form I had been dreading. It was labeled as a fraud and identity dispute affidavit. I stared at that word for a long time. Fraud. Felt enormous. It felt like calling the police on my mother, even though that was not what I was doing. Joel found me sitting at the table with the unsigned form. You don't have to decide because you're angry, he said. I'm not angry. He looked at me. Okay, I'm not only angry. He pulled out the chair across from me. If you don't sign it, what happens? I don't know. They might keep me on the account. And if you sign it? They investigate. They could transfer responsibility. Owen could lose the program. Which part is actually your decision? I hated when he asked questions that forced me to separate things. My name. Yes. Not whether Owen gets treatment. Yes. But my choice affects his treatment. It might. I rubbed my forehead. I can protect myself and still hate what happens to him. Joel nodded. That sounds true. So I signed. With my own pen. Not the blue one. A black pen from the cup on our kitchen counter. I scanned the affidavit, attached the timeline, added the relevant texts, and sent everything to the investigator. Then I cried in the bathroom for 10 minutes. Not because I thought I was wrong. Because doing the right thing did not feel clean. My mother came to my house the next evening. Joel answered the door and called for me. He did not block her or speak for me. He just stayed nearby. Mom looked awful. Her hair was pulled back badly. Her eyes were swollen. She held her purse against her body with both hands. You filed something, she said. Yes. Fraud. Yes. Her face crumpled. Do you understand what that word could do? Do you understand what you did? He is sick. I know. He could die. I know addiction is serious. You say that like a brochure. I flinched. She stepped inside. They are talking about changing his placement. Do you understand that? He finally agreed to stay. He finally admitted he needs help, and now because you cannot stand to be inconvenienced financially, they may move him. $47,600 is not an inconvenience. You have always been obsessed with keeping score. That one almost got me. My mother knew exactly which version of me to attack. The cold daughter. The selfish sister. The one who had everything together and therefore had no excuse not to give more. I said, "Did you tell me what I was signing?" She looked away. Did you? You would have said no. That is not an answer. It is the truth. No. The truth is you wanted my signature without my answer. She started crying harder. I did what any mother would do. No. You don't know what it is like to watch your child destroy himself. No, I don't. I thought I was going to lose him. Her voice broke on that, and for a second I saw something real underneath the manipulation. Fear. I believe she was terrified. I believe she loved Owen. I also believe she had used me. Both things could be true. She said, "If you loved him, you would not do this while he's in treatment." I swallowed. If saving him requires stealing from me, you are not saving him. She recoiled like I had slapped her. Stealing. My consent. My name. My financial responsibility. Pick one. You signed it. Because you lied about what it was. She shook her head. You always make everything sound so harsh. I laughed then and I hated how bitter it sounded. Mom, the harsh part happened before I described it. She left without saying goodbye. The family calls started after that. Not a group chat explosion. My family is more controlled than that. They prefer private pressure because everyone can pretend they are only checking in. An aunt called and told me treatment programs are expensive but lives are priceless. A family friend texted that addiction is a disease. My uncle asked whether I could at least cover part of the bill until Owen stabilized. Every single person had been given some version of the story where I had knowingly agreed to help and then changed my mind. Beth called me again. This time she said, "I think you need to show me what you have." So I did. I did not send Owen's treatment notes or anything private about his health. I sent her the signature page with my financial information redacted except for my name. I sent the timestamp. I sent the clinic record showing I was in recovery. I sent Mom's text saying the issue was my brother's life, not my finances. I sent Dad's message saying to let the agreement stand for now. Beth called me 10 minutes later. Your dad really wrote that? Yes. He knew. Yes. She was quiet. Then she said, "I'm sorry I called you before I knew. I did not say it was fine. It was not fine." But I said, "Thank you." A few days later, Aunt Diane invited us to dinner. She is my mother's younger sister, 59, and she has always been the person in the family who thinks a meal can fix anything. Her message said, "I want everyone in one place so nobody is speaking through other people." I almost declined. Joel said, "Do you want to go?" No. Then don't. I thought about Mom calling relatives one by one, Dad telling people I was making it legal, Owen saying I was choosing money over treatment. I need them to hear it once. Joel nodded. Then go for that reason. Not to get an apology. That turned out to be useful advice. Dinner was at Diane's house. Diane, her husband, Beth, my parents, Owen, Joel, and I were there. Owen had been allowed a short family visit as part of his program at that point. He looked thinner than the last time I had seen him. His face was puffy in that strange way people can look when their body is still adjusting to sobriety. He avoided my eyes. Mom sat beside him. Dad sat at the end of the table. For the first 15 minutes, everybody pretended we were having a normal dinner. Then Diane put down her fork. Okay, we are not doing this all night. Mom inhaled and immediately started. I did not want this to become a public trial. I almost laughed. She had called half the family, Diane said. Then explain what happened. Mom took Owen's hand. He had a serious incident. He finally agreed to enter treatment. We had a very small window before he changed his mind. Dad added, the facility needed financial paperwork completed quickly. I said nothing yet. Mom continued. Rachel signed. Then later, after talking to Joel, she decided to contest it. Joel looked at me but stayed quiet. I said, that is not what happened. Dad rubbed his forehead. Rachel, please don't turn this into courtroom language. I brought the paperwork. Mom stared at me. Of course, I did not bring a dramatic folder and slap it on the table. I had printed a few pages and kept them in a plain envelope in my purse. I took out the first page. This is the recovery record from my procedure. Medication was given here. I was documented as drowsy in recovery here. I met discharge criteria later. I placed the second page beside it. This is the rehab agreement. The timestamp on the signature page falls during that recovery period. Mom shook her head. You were awake. I was responsive. That is not the same as being told what I was signing. Dad said, you signed your name. I did. That surprised a couple of people. I continued. I'm not claiming somebody copied my signature. I'm saying Mom put the page in front of me while I was recovering from sedation and told me it was paperwork so she could take me home. Mom cut in. It was paperwork. For Owen's rehab. You knew he needed help. I did not even know where he was. Beth said quietly, that's true. You told me before Rachel knew. Mom turned toward her. Beth, please. I took out the next page. This is the full financial agreement. My information was already filled in before my procedure. My name, address, phone number. The signature was added the day Mom drove me. Diane looked at Mom. How did the facility get Rachel's information? Mom's face hardened. We gave it to them because there was no time. Who is we? I asked. Dad said, your mother and I were handling an emergency. There it was. Not Mom alone. Diane looked at Dad. You knew she was using Rachel as guarantor? He said. I knew Rachel was the only realistic option at that moment. I pulled out a printout of his text. Then why did you tell me? Let it stand for now. Once he's stable, we'll figure out the money? Dad's face changed. Not much, but enough. Diane read the text. Beth read it over her shoulder. Dad said, that was after the fact. I said, Owen told me you said I'd calm down once he was already inside. Every eye at the table went to Owen. He looked down. Mom whispered, Owen. He rubbed both hands over his face. I don't remember the exact words. Dad said, because I did not say that. Owen looked at him. You said something like that. Dad's jaw tightened. Something like that is not the same thing. I felt almost calm by then. I had spent days shaking, crying, and second-guessing myself. At that table, hearing my father argue about phrasing while my signature sat on a $47,600 obligation, something in me settled. I said, fine. Forget the exact words. Did either of you ask me to guarantee the program before Mom put the signature page in front of me? Neither answered. Diane looked at Mom. Linda, did Rachel know what she was signing? Mom's eyes filled again. She knew Owen needed help. That is not what I asked. Diane's voice was not loud. Did she know that paper made her financially responsible for his treatment? Mom stared at the table. Then she said, if I had explained every detail, she would have refused. That was the answer. There was no dramatic silence where everybody froze. Diane sighed. Beth leaned back in her chair. Joel looked down at his plate. Dad muttered, this is exactly why I did not want a family tribunal. Owen finally looked at me. So that's it. I turned to him. What? You get to blow everything up because Mom handled it wrong? Handled it wrong? You know what I mean. No. I want you to say what you mean. His eyes were red. I'm trying to get help. I am actually doing the thing everybody said I needed to do for years. And you're choosing money over my life. My chest tightened. That was the hardest part of the entire night because I believed he was trying. Maybe not perfectly. Maybe partly because the crash scared him. Maybe partly because legal consequences scared him. But he was in treatment. He looked ashamed and furious and frightened. I said, I hope you get help. He scoffed. I do. Then why are you doing this? Because I won't be the lie that pays for it. He looked away. I continued quieter. I am not asking them to stop treating you. I am asking them to stop treating my name like something Mom and Dad can spend. He said, you can afford more than they can. That does not make me the guarantor. It's family. No, family is asking. This was not asking. Mom said, you always hated that we helped him more. I looked at her. Do not do that. It is true. I was jealous sometimes. I was angry sometimes. I resented cleaning up things he should have handled himself. None of that gave you permission to put a contract in front of me while I was coming out of sedation. Dad said, nobody forced your hand. I almost could not believe he said it. I looked at him. You are right. Mom didn't physically move my hand. She lied about the page. He said, you are determined to use the ugliest possible interpretation. A signature taken from someone you kept in the dark is not permission. That was as close as I came to a line I had rehearsed. Everything after that got messy, eh? Diane told Mom she should have asked me. Mom said asking would have defeated the purpose because I would have said no. Beth said that was exactly why asking mattered. Dad argued that nobody intended to leave me with the whole bill permanently. I asked what temporarily meant on a legal financial agreement. He had no answer. Owen got up from the table at one point and stood in Diane's kitchen for a while. I did not follow him. Eventually he came back. He looked at me and said, I didn't plan the paperwork. I know. I knew they were talking about you, but I didn't know exactly what they did. I believe that. His shoulders dropped slightly. Then I added, but once you knew, you still wanted me to leave it alone. He looked down. Yeah. That honesty hurt, but I respected it more than his earlier excuses. Before we left, I told my parents what was changing. I am not signing anything for Owen. I am not paying this contract. Do not use my address, ID information, insurance information, or financial information for anything. Do not ask other relatives to pressure me about it. Mom shook her head. You are cutting us off. No. It sounds like it. I am cutting off access to my name and money. Dad said, what about the things you help us with? That question answered itself. For the past few years I had covered a few small things for my parents. A streaming account, part of their phone plan, occasional bills when they were short, nothing huge by itself. But after seeing how easily they converted Rachel helps into Rachel will be responsible, I stopped all of it. I gave them 30 days to move their phone lines. I removed my card from 2 recurring household services. I changed account passwords. I put extra verification on my credit files and started watching them more closely. I changed the emergency contact on some of my medical paperwork so Mom would not automatically be the backup if Joel could not be reached. That last one made me unexpectedly sad. Mom had been my emergency contact for years. Even after I married Joel, I still trusted her with medical information. Now I could not look at a consent form without seeing that blue pen. The rehab facility froze collection activity against me while their review continued. About 3 weeks after the family dinner, the investigator called. He said the facility would not continue treating me as a valid guarantor under the disputed agreement while the matter was under review. They needed a new, valid financial arrangement if Owen was going to remain in the same private program. My parents could not cover the entire cost under the facility's terms. Owen did not have the money, so he left that program. That was the consequence I had been afraid of. He did not end up on the street. My parents and a case coordinator found a less expensive treatment option that was partly covered and did not require me to guarantee tens of thousands of dollars. The program was not as nice. It did not have the same amenities. It was farther away. Owen complained about all of that. But he stayed in treatment. For a while at least. I am careful about how I talk about that part because recovery is not a neat ending. He did not come out transformed. He did not call me with a perfect apology. He had good weeks and bad weeks. He blamed our parents sometimes. He blamed himself sometimes. He blamed me at least once. A couple of months after the contract dispute, he called. I still think you could have waited. I know. I was barely holding it together. I know. They moved me because of you. They moved you because the contract they used was not valid. You always do that. Do what? Make it sound technical. I thought about that. Maybe. Sometimes technical facts are easier than the emotional ones. He was quiet. Then he said, the emotional one is that you didn't trust me. I almost laughed. No, Owen. The emotional one is that nobody trusted me enough to let me decide. That stopped him. After a while he said, I didn't know Mom was going to get you to sign it like that. I believe you. But I knew they were trying to make the money work. I believe that too. Another pause. I should have asked. Yes. That was the closest thing to an apology I got from him for a long time. I did not tell him it erased anything. It did not. My relationship with my parents changed more permanently. Dad never admitted he had done anything morally wrong. His position remained that there had been an emergency, they had needed to act, and I had escalated something that could have been worked out privately. I asked him once what worked out privately would have looked like. He said, we would have found a way to pay you back. That told me he still did not understand. He thought the harm was the money. The money mattered. Of course it did. But even if the contract had been for $476 instead of $47,600, I would never have been able to look at that signature the same way. Mom apologized in pieces. I'm sorry you felt tricked. I'm sorry it got so out of control. I'm sorry we were desperate. Never at first. I'm sorry I lied to you about the document. When I pointed that out, she cried and said I wanted her to use cruel language against herself. I stopped trying to force the confession. Beth apologized more clearly. I helped pressure you without knowing the truth. I shouldn't have. Diane apologized too. She said she had invited us to dinner thinking I needed to become more flexible, and by the end she realized the question had never been whether helping Owen was good. The question was whether my parents had the right to volunteer me. Some relatives never came around. One aunt still believes I should have paid at least part of the treatment because I could afford more than my parents. A family friend told me that when addiction is involved, normal rules have to bend. I told her there is a difference between bending a rule and taking somebody else's signature. We do not talk much now. The final dispute process took longer than I expected. There were more forms, more calls, and one request for a notarized statement. The facility eventually confirmed in writing that it would not pursue me under the disputed guarantor agreement. I was not given some dramatic declaration that my mother had committed a crime. There was no courtroom, no arrest, no public reckoning. The practical result was enough. My name came off the obligation. The balance had to be handled through a valid agreement with the people actually responsible for Owen's care. My parents had to face a choice they had tried to avoid. Either put their own finances behind the private program, have Owen assume responsibility he could actually carry, or choose a different treatment option. They chose different treatment. That was not revenge. It was reality returning to the people it belonged to. I lost things too. For several months, Mom and I barely spoke. Dad stopped calling unless something was important. Holiday dinners became awkward. Owen and I went from talking every week or two to occasional short calls. I also had to admit something uncomfortable about myself. I had spent years helping create the version of me my family depended on. Not the forgery, not the deception. That was theirs. But I had trained everyone to believe I would absorb discomfort quietly. I said yes to small things I resented because saying no felt mean. I paid for things and pretended I did not care. I let Mom tell relatives half stories because correcting her sounded dramatic. I let Dad call serious problems paperwork because arguing with him was exhausting. My boundaries had been requests. Please don't put me in the middle. Please don't ask me for money again this month. Please don't tell people I said something I didn't. Please don't give Owen my number without asking. I thought calm wording made a boundary healthy. But a boundary nobody respects is just information about what you wish would happen. The new version was simpler. No accounts in my name for relatives. No signatures I have not read. No financial guarantees. No access to my personal documents. No discussing my private finances with extended family. If somebody pressures me after I say no, the conversation ends. That sounds harsh when I write it down. In practice, my life got quieter. About 6 months after everything started, I was cleaning out the purse I had taken to the procedure. I had not used it much since then. There were receipts at the bottom, an old lip balm, a packet of tissues, and a cheap blue pen. I knew immediately where it came from. Same translucent plastic. Same scratched cap. I sat there holding it and had this strange physical memory of trying to make my eyes focus in the recovery room. Mom's hand on the clipboard. Her finger tapping the line. It's just so I can take you home. For months I had treated that pen like evidence in my own head. Not literal evidence. I had never submitted it anywhere. It could have come from a dozen offices. But emotionally it was the object that held the whole thing. The old version of me wanted to keep it. Maybe because keeping it felt like proving the betrayal had happened. A few days later, the final written confirmation from the rehab facility arrived. They needed one last acknowledgement from me confirming receipt and closure of the dispute on my account. I printed it at home. I read every line. Then I signed it with a pen from my own desk. I checked the page again before scanning it. Afterward, I picked up the blue pen from the counter and dropped it in the trash. Nothing dramatic happened. I still loved my mother. I still wanted my brother sober. I still wished my father would admit that calling something paperwork does not make it harmless. But my signature was mine again. And for the first time in my family, Rachel can handle it no longer meant they got to decide what I had to handle. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.